I'm McCauley, and I'm at Pray It Off in Syracuse, New York. Every week I film just me, not you, and it goes on to our blog, which is called Pray It Off. And if you miss a meeting or if you want to watch it, several people have emailed me and they've sent it to their sister and their brother and other people they know. You can feel free to share it with whoever you'd like. I'd love it if it went viral. I would love it if Pray It Off was like viral on YouTube. Maybe someday it will be. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the back of the food log. And those who feel comfortable they can say it along with me, but I love this prayer. It's called the Dieter's Prayer. Feel free to say it with me if the Spirit moves you. Dear God, I admit that I have come to both love and hate the word diet. On the one hand, it represents hope for change. On the other hand, it's like a sign flashing failure ahead. I don't want to simply embark on another faulty plan, Lord. I want to embark on a journey with you that is led by you and depends on your power. I can do nothing on my own. Show me the right path that will enable me to change. Show me as only you, who knows me so intimately, can what works for me, what is healthy for me. I want to think of this venture in positive terms, Lord. Not that I am signing up to be miserable or in want. I want to learn to redirect my thinking, to feed my body what it truly needs when it truly needs it, and to feed my soul with the bread of life, you. Today I place my future, my failures, my setbacks, all of my hopes and plans into your hands. There alone will I find meaning and true success in my life. Amen. And some people who gave me their food logs tonight said, I almost didn't want to give it to you because I love that prayer that's on the back of it. And you will get it back next week, the anxiety prayer. And several people told me they've been saying it every day and they feel the power of that prayer. There is nothing wrong with praying about a healthy lifestyle. Because what does God want us to pray about? Everything. Everything. You know, it's not selfish to say, please help the people in Mexico, and please help the people who are suffering, and please help the people who are hungry. And Lord, I would love it if you would think about me, you know, when you're so busy, but He has eternity. He's an omnipresent God. He cares so much about our needs, even if we think they're not as important. Is our losing weight as important as some of the issues in the world? Absolutely not. But in order for us to be the best versions of the people He created us to be, we're the best versions when we're healthy and happy and whole. And you know, I've been doing this, as I said, for 10 years. And I've talked about several different topics a few times. I've talked about anxiety at just about every session. I've talked about depression and stress and how that gets to us and turns us to donuts and hot fudge sundaes. But you know, it was interesting. Right before Pray It Off started, I had to talk at least 9 people off the ledge. They called me and said, Ellen, I don't think I can come back. I'm so ashamed of myself. I gained so much weight over the summer. I was crazy. I was eating everything that wasn't nailed down. I went to the fair 5 times. I was eating like I was getting paid to eat. And I'm just ashamed. And we talked, and every single one of them came back. But every single one of them used the word shame. Every single one of them said, I am so ashamed. And you know, it's interesting, and I know that Jessica wouldn't mind me saying this because it's on the blog. When she won her 40-pound award, she gave a testimony. And a year ago, I had run into her at a garage sale, but I didn't see her, she saw me first. And she said, I didn't want you to see me because I felt ashamed because I put weight on. And I didn't want you to, you know, see me. And I remember, and I've told this before, that I was the star of Weight Watchers. Lost 145 pounds, and then I thought I knew it all, quit, gained it all back. And our leader was so nice, and she was so sweet. And I'm in Walmart, and I'm just at 300 and some odd pounds, gained the weight back. Don't I see Mary over there? You never saw a 340-something pound woman move faster than light, because I did not want Mary to see me. I didn't want her to see me because I felt so ashamed that I had lost that weight and gained it back. And I remember that feeling. It was such dread. I don't want her to see me. I don't want her to see me. And I'm not asking for a show of hands, but if anyone has felt that like, ooh, I put on weight and I don't want to go to my reunion or that wedding or whatever. And I want to talk about shame tonight for the first time ever, because when I started preparing this meeting, I could not believe how much shame has affected my entire life. I always thought that anxiety was the reason I struggled with my food, until I really thought about shame. And psychologists have said that shame is emerging as the master emotion that influences all the others. And when I read that, I went, really? Yeah, right, you know? And then it says shame is an emotion that's so difficult to admit, and it's difficult to discharge, difficult to get rid of. And I kind of just sat there and I thought about my life, as I think we all need to do in order to lose weight. We don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in all the days that God is to hear and all the days that God's going to give us forward. And the reasons we are trying to lose weight are many. And I think you need to look, in order to change, you need to know what about my life makes me make these food decisions. And so I thought about my life, and I realized how much shame that encompassed my life. We lived in such a terrible house, in a really nice neighborhood. It was like, we called it the dump. We lived in a dump. And I was so ashamed that I lived there. I was so ashamed that that was our house. But that's all we could afford. And I was so ashamed that my father was an alcoholic. And he was an alcoholic that was very public. Like, he'd go and get drunk, and then he'd come home and he'd pass out right in the middle of the street, and the neighbors would have to drag him in the house, and then I'd have to go to school the next day. And I was ashamed of that. And God forbid me for saying this. I was ashamed that I had a sister that had a mental handicap. I was ashamed of that because they called us names. And as I was dealing with all that shame, I hit puberty, and then I started turning to food to kind of cope with all those things. And then, catch-22, I became ashamed of myself. I was ashamed that I was so fat. And then they started calling us names, and they started saying, you know, Ellen Bellin, the watermelon. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much shame has to do with so much of how we live our lives. Shame goes to one's basic sense of self and is most often experienced as an embarrassment or humiliation. You know, you come out of the ladies' room and there's toilet paper on your shoe and you're walking. I mean, that's a little embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's a one-time thing. Now, if you had a permanent piece of toilet paper on your shoe and you constantly walked around like that, maybe that's a little shameful. But I'm talking about something that goes right to where you are as a person, that you carry with you, that you feel is part of who you are. And I've said before that they would call us retards. You know, here comes the McCauley, retards. And I think that was so shameful to me, and I kept trying to prove I'm not a retard, I'm smart. Watch, I'll work really hard, and I'll get the best marks in school, and all that pressure I put on myself. And the only way to let that pressure up was in eating things that were not good for me. And I'm not asking anyone in small group to divulge things, but there's so many things in our lives that perhaps we never talk about. How many people have experienced, and I don't mean in this room, but in life, sexual abuse. And they never talk about it because they feel the shame. And there's a lot of weight issues associated with sex abuse, with improper sexual advances, with just developing sexuality. And we just don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. And it reminds me of a friend of mine. They had, kids, teenage kids, and the one teenage sister, 14 years old, got pregnant. And there's like 4 teenagers and the mother and father. And every day they'd eat dinner together, and every day she'd get bigger and bigger. She was like 7 months pregnant, obviously. They never talked about it. They never said, "Are you pregnant?" Or, "You can have a baby." Can you imagine living in a family? They never even talked about it. They never brought it up. They never said, "What's going on? Are you pregnant?" I can't imagine that. And I have another friend who said to me that her parents, they came home from school one day, and the father wasn't there, and he had, gone and had another life, and they never talked about it again. The kid's like, "Where's Dad?" "Not here." I can't imagine that, but there's a lot of shame involved with it, a lot of issues involved with not discussing these things that are happening in our lives. And a child's sense of not being supported or not being, and my mother did the best she could. When I came home and I'd say, the kids made fun of me, she would say, "You're the best, you're so smart, you're going to be the most popular girl." She'd give me all the right responses, and then she'd say, "Let's have a bowl of ice cream." And I would sit there and I would cry and tell her everything, and she'd tell me how great I was. And we'd have a bowl of ice cream because the ice cream made us feel better. And when you have that in your roots, and the same thing about alcoholism, there's shame about that. And it's an illness. It's an illness that we just associate shame with it. Why can't they just, sober up? Why can't they just do this? But we just lash out. And a lot of men and women who are verbally and physically abusive feel inadequate. They feel shamed about other things in their lives, and they strike out in rage and anger. And I went through a huge period of anger in my life where I would snap at this or that. I'm so much calmer since I started Pray It Off, and I realized that it was the pressure and trying to do all these things and be perfect and all these things to compensate. I'm valuable, and I just couldn't take that pressure. And it's a hidden motive that we don't always think about. And those of us who have lived with things that we're ashamed of have demanding standards. So we're 20 or 30 or 40 or however many pounds overweight, and we say, "I'm going to eat healthy every single day. I'm never going to have one bad thing." And then we have a mistake, or we eat something like a cookie. Then we give up, we quit. I failed. It's all black, white, because we have these demanding standards that if you deviate or do this or that, it's just not what we think is successful. And I love this. The single most effective antidote to shame is to laugh at yourself. And sometimes it takes a lot of time to laugh at yourself. I told this story before. When you've been doing this 10 years, you do tell your stories a couple times. But one of the neighborhood kids made up a really cute song about our family. And my sister and I thought it was really, really catchy. So we were singing it to my mother, and it would go like this: "Who's drinking all that Diet Right Cola? All the McCauleys." Because it was Diet Right Cola, and we were all fat. So we're singing it to my mother, and she's like, "You stupid idiot, he's making fun of you. You don't even know that. You don't even know you're being made fun of." Now we can laugh about it. Remember who's drinking all that Diet Right Cola? But back then it was shameful, it was embarrassing. But I can laugh about it now and mean it. I do think it's kind of funny. It's a funny story. But if you can laugh about things like you make a mistake and you think it's the most worst thing in the world, and you talk about it later and you have a laugh about it. Also, it reminds me about mentioning counseling. Counseling is so important, and I highly recommend it to people who really are dealing with huge issues. For example, you don't like to talk about things. People don't talk about divorce. I rarely mention that I was married once already, that I had a divorce in my life. Some people here in the room are probably shocked to hear that. I don't talk about it because I feel like it was a failure. I failed at my first marriage. I mean, in retrospect, I can look back and see different things, but for years and years and years, I didn't talk about it because I felt ashamed about it. I felt like I was a failure. Vietnam vets, anyone watching Ken Burns' Vietnam War? It's incredible. It's incredible. And there was two guys, they were best friends for 30 years, and one day somebody brought something up, and they were both Marines, Vietnam veterans, and for the 30 years, I mean, they hunted, they fished, they did everything together. Neither one of them knew the other guy was in Vietnam because they didn't talk about it. So many Vietnam vets feel shame to talk about it because it wasn't a popular war. It wasn't where people thought we should have been, so they're ashamed about it. One thing too, and I think I want people to really think, and you might say, Ellen, I just have trouble eating a couple of cookies. I don't have any shame in my life. But some people really have to face other things, whether it's anxiety or depression. And I'm going to stop right there, Bobby, and go on to that.